Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm your host for our discussion today. I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Wright, Sales Director at Asset Alliance. Hello, Paul. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon, Kate.
Nice to speak to you. We've not spoken before, Paul. So it would be quite nice if you could just give me a quick overview of Asset Alliance and what you do.
Yeah, of course. So Asset Alliance Group, we are a leading provider of HGV truck and trailers across our industry, servicing our transportation industry within the UK. We've been operating for 13 plus years and currently manage and own around 5,000 assets from 3.5 ton up to your 44 ton tractor unit stage.
Great, thank you. So you're exactly the right person to be talking to then, because today we're discussing commercial vehicle decarbonisation. So we all know that there's that on the commercial vehicle side, particularly as you get above 3.5 tons, the development in the market is a little bit behind where we are with passenger cars. But we do know that the government has announced plans to ban the sale of new 26-ton trucks from 2035. And then when we move to 2040, it'll be the heavier trucks. What challenges is this going to pose for commercial vehicle operators?
Yeah, I think several, to be honest, for the commercial vehicle operators. This could be significant for some, maybe not for others, but there are several things to consider. Cost of vehicles for one. Transitioning to non-diesel vehicles is likely to involve a higher upfront cost. Generally due to the price difference now. At the minute they're eye-watering. We do expect those maybe to level out or indeed come down as we move closer to the deadlines, and that's really for electric or hydrogen at this stage. So operators will need to assess their budgets and financial feasibility of acquiring new vehicles within the given time frame. I think also the range of vehicles, the range of non-diesel vans and trucks, may be limited again as we move towards that deadline, especially in the early stage of transition. Operators will need to evaluate capabilities of the alternative vehicles with regard to range and fuel that are able to meet their operational requirements. I think one of the big questions at the minute is the infrastructure. The charging infrastructure, certainly for electrics, it is a significant challenge for all operators, even those few that are maybe trialing one or two at the minute. They're having to put in alternative means of sourcing power, despite us having facilities in certain locations up and down our motorway network. This is by no means will be able to cater for what will be a higher degree of need. Operational downtime and logistics, again, that's something to consider. Switching from diesel to alternative fuels will take a lot of planning and a lot of time with regard to sorry, I was going to say retraining drivers and all that that goes with it. Operators may experience downtime during transition periods as well. The availability of vehicles as and when ordering. Logistics planning will be crucial, just to ensure a smooth transition. And of course, fleet maintenance and management, a lot of this won't be familiar to a lot of planners at the minute. So there are all aspects with regard to, how we embrace upon, this new technology. And indeed, dare I say, sort of resale value of diesel vehicles. We will have to dispose, within a timely period, a lot of diesel vehicles, because during the process or the lead up to any switch off, because at some point they will become useless within the UK operating. So that's certainly a factor.
Paul, I mean, you've mentioned so many elements there, operational, technological, charging infrastructure, and in some respects, I'm thinking, gosh, a startup business today who went straight for electric would actually probably find it easier than those who are trying to transition away from an existing diesel fleet, because nothing is geared up for this transition in that sense. And of course, you're absolutely right. Vehicle availability remains a challenge. And in terms of the public infrastructure, the transit system, it's built entirely for passenger cars. I mean, even the smaller vans struggle to fit into that. So it's not fit for purpose. So we've got to go back to the beginning. So, I mean, clearly this is going to take time. We have got time because we're talking about 2035, 2040. But what steps can freight operators take now to prepare them for this diesel-free future?
Yeah, I mean, for a diesel-free future, freight operators can take several steps really to facilitate the transition. Evaluate duty cycles, analyze, what their need is now and indeed going forward. Maybe re-looking at their routes and distances, usage patterns, determine optimal range, etc. Research alternative fuel options. I mean, electric is the big one at the minute, but there are alternative fuel options. I'm not sure what that's going to look like as we lead towards those particular dates. But currently, hydrogen and biofuels, etc., are currently available on the market. Again, at certain stages within their usage, but certainly, operators are starting to look at various options when it comes to alternative fuels. Availability, performance, range, as I mentioned earlier, will all be factors because at this minute operators have been used to for the last 40, 50 plus years a one fuel sort of system. They are very familiar with the capabilities and the accessibility of that, and there is change, and albeit there is time, some of our customers are currently consulting with us to look at what that might look like in the next, shall we say, vehicle swap out cycle or indeed replacement cycle, when you actually think there's probably only a couple of diesel replacement cycles to go before we heavily have to start looking at swapping those fleets to alternative fuels. Stay informed about funding options. There will be a significant increase in cost for operators to move away from the functional diesel assets to electric, and albeit costs at this minute are unknown as far as what that's going to look like at the time. It's probably going to be an on cost to a current business. And again, research and engage financiers and leasing companies, and of course Asset Alliance Group will be able to provide a consultative approach for anybody looking at this now or indeed in the future. Obviously, invest in charging infrastructure. Look to see what that looks like. That is a huge on cost, especially if you're doing it in-house. The ability to sort of have that feed from outside infrastructure is going to be a big cost, and maybe even retrofitting existing fleets. Look at what that might look like, especially for some of the later models. And collaboration, engage with others, I suppose, to have a collaborative and informed knowledge of what that might look like. Most of our industry operate the same sort of trucks within a range, and indeed I don't see that sort of changing as we move into this new time.
Great, thank you, Paul. I was kind of thinking people tend to jump straight to the most difficult use cases, so well, what about the 44-ton trucks and so on. But the reality is that there are a lot of smaller vehicles out there on the roads today that would be suitable for electrification or indeed another form of decarbonisation. And people often talk about last mile and urban operations in this context, and because they generally tend to be return to depot and relatively low mileage. So what solutions are out there for commercial vehicle operators in that field?
Well, I think a lot of operators are very conscious of this at the minute with regard to last mile, efficiencies, etc. There are a lot of steps already being taken. Currently, there are a lot of 3.5 ton sort of LCV type vehicles operating on electric quite successfully. It's very important for operators to look into decarbonisation, certainly in the last mile. And I do believe that a lot of operators are thinking about this more so now, and indeed operate that, currently today. The environmental impact, last mile and urban operations often contribute significantly to pollution and greenhouse gases, purely because of the concentration in urban areas. Decarbonising these operations can help improve air quality and reduce the carbon footprint, obviously, leading to a healthier environment. Governments and local authorities are implementing stricter regulations and emissions standards in order to combat these. So establishing urban logistic hubs or consolidation centres, that will definitely help deliveries in urban areas. The approach seems to be working. Certainly we are seeing more and more sort of low emission zones. So I think operators are quite savvy to this currently, and I don't really think that that's going to be a problem for them in the future. Going forward, intelligent transportation systems, real-time data, traffic management, all that sort of accessibility of quieter time delivering, less idling, more efficient ways of distributing goods in an urban area, obviously will improve air quality and indeed decarbonisation.
Well, there's certainly a lot of people working on this, Paul. So my final question then is, what support do you believe should be there for these commercial fleet operators to help them with their electric vehicle transition? Particularly when we start talking about the larger vehicles, because this is very much emerging, and it does seem to be an area that's not getting the attention that it needs.
Well, interestingly, I don't think we know enough about what support could be coming down the tracks from the government or indeed lobbying groups, etc. It is still very much an unknown, I think, in certain areas. But again, that will become much clearer as we move towards some of these dates. Yeah. But grants and incentives, that really has to be a big play, and that would be left for operators and lobbying groups to do that, of course. But government grants and financial incentives in order to kickstart some of this, because I think it's reasonable to suggest that this hasn't been kickstarted in some of the heavier asset range. As we say, LCV up to 3.5 ton, maybe middle up to 7.5 ton. We're sort of moving towards that. But this industry operates an awful lot of HGV assets, and indeed would need to transition to that. Providing grants for EVs can encourage fleet operators, obviously, to make the switch easier and quicker by reducing the initial investment and narrowing the gap between what prices they're paying now and indeed what are being offered on EVs. But again, I go back to the infrastructure development. Without the infrastructure, operators can't really see themselves investing heavily into electric vehicles or indeed alternative fuels, because without that and being assured and confident that they can easily recharge or indeed refill would is important, because otherwise the vehicle would be deemed useless. So yeah, support needs to be given for that, and I think the government have an awful lot of a big part to play in assuring operators that these are the plans ahead, whether that's now or indeed over the coming early years. I think also financial assistance and incentives could be provided at trials, demonstrations. OEMs have a big part to play with regard to engaging with large operators. Research and development. It is a while away, 20 years or so, maybe for the 44 ton. But that will go very quick. I mean, that's not very long at all. And of course, training and workforce development as well. So there's a lot to be considered, albeit we have a number of years before we get there. Typically in our industry, we are good planners. We want to plan ahead and have some foresight into what that looks like. And that will be sort of key, really, to making this a successful transition into EV.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. I mean, you've pretty much covered it off. I completely agree with you with regards to the infrastructure, the incentives and the funding, but also that visibility and reassurance from government in terms of what this plan looks like, when this is all going to be rolled out. Let's have some more timelines, and let's have some more visibility on, what exemptions there may be in the period running up to the 2035. So Paul, you've obviously put a great deal of thought into this, covered a huge amount. Thank you very much for your insight today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is about all we've got time for. I would like to say thank you to Asset Alliance for joining GreenFleet Talks, and thank you for watching. Please tune in again soon.